You're listening to the Author Stories Podcast, bringing you the story behind the stories and the storytellers.
Margaret White,
Terry Brooks,
Sheena Kamal,
Matthew Quick,
J.T. Ellison,
Walt D. Williams,
Brad Thor,
Corey Doctorow,
Brandon Sanderson,
Robin Mom,
Ernest Klein, Jim Butcher,
Charlene Harris.
Visit hankgarner.com for archives of all the shows. Today's guest is
thanks for joining me again for the Author Stories Podcast, where I bring you the story behind the stories and the storytellers. Today, I am super excited to have one of my favorite authors back on the show. L.C. Shaw, or as I know her, Lynn Constantine, is back on the show today to talk about her brand new book. It's called The Silent Conspiracy, and it's book 2 in the Jack Logan series. And I got to tell you what, LC, this is a fantastic book. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here.
Absolutely. So I got a pre-release art copy of the book maybe about a month ago, I think. And I tell you what, it just it sucked me in like like a good thriller should. First off, can you tell us a little bit about who Jack Logan is?
Sure. So Jack Logan is one of my favorite characters to write, and he is an investigative journalist living in New York City who grew up in a large Irish Catholic family. He's a guy's guy, but has a lot of integrity, but very much into his job and always kind of ready to fight the good fight. And his past is, I wouldn't say traumatic necessarily, but, he lost the love of his life, Taylor Phillips, when he was in his 20s because of some bad decisions that he made. And so that's been kind of one of the major regrets of his life. And the two of them are brought back together in the first book, The Network, when Taylor's life is in jeopardy as her husband is murdered, and Jack, the two of them are thrown together, and she's not too thrilled to see him, but he's there to kind of help her. And so this silent conspiracy picks up their story, and now they are married in the second book.
So as a lot of our listeners will know, you also write with your sister as the writing duo known as Liv Constantine, and you guys have had some amazing releases with The Last Mrs. Parrish, The Last Time I Saw You, and now out earlier this year, The Wife Stalker. Incredible stuff that you guys are doing as a team. One thing, having been familiar with your catalog of the things that that you write with your sister, and then the things that you do as a standalone author, there's a different tone to the two different types of stories that come out from you when you're approaching a new writing project, say an L.C. Shaw book. Is it a different process from the beginning than it is when you're writing a book with Liv?
Yes, yeah. When Valerie and I write together, we typically start with a twist. We do a lot of brainstorming, and we really begin with what we hope is the major mind-blowing twist, and we then draw the characters and kind of figure out the story from there. And it's a lot less plotted. Not that the L.C. Shaws are plotted, because I don't really plot in great detail for either. But with the psychological thrillers, we go a lot more into the depth of character, into kind of the thinking and what's going on in the characters' minds. With the L.C. Shaw books, because they're more action adventure conspiracy thrillers, I don't necessarily say that there's more twists, but I think there's more twists and turns and more action in these books. And so there are a lot of threads that I have to bring together, which definitely require me to stand back and kind of figure out, if not exactly what's going to happen, a better idea of the progression of the story through the chapters. And there typically also are more points of view. In the L.C. Shaw books, you hear you're in the point of view of a couple of the bad guys in the Elsie Shaw books, which typically doesn't happen so much in the Liv books. So again, I'm pulling all of these different plot lines together and having to make sure that everything kind of converges in the right way. So it takes more, I think there's more architectural planning with the Elsie Shaw. And then also, of course, the fact that I'm writing these solo, I don't have the same brainstorming process that I do with Valerie, because we sit there and a lot of times we'll go through 2 or 3 or even 4 iterations and something will change. So for me, I mean, I do some talking to myself, or I might, have some friends that I can throw things off, but it's much more solitary process.
It seems to me that the books that you write with Valerie as Liv Constantine are very, I can't think of the word that I want to use. So they seem to be very close to the characters, or to a particular set of characters. Whereas the Elsie Shaw books tend to the stage is broader. They seem to not be as close as inside the head as the books that you write with Valerie. Is that an intentional thing? And are those some of the essence of what makes a psychological thriller versus more of a action adventure thriller, if that makes any sense at all?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think you hit the nail on the head. I think with the psychological thrillers, we're much more in the minds of the characters and, the psychological motivations or the psychological traumas and issues that have brought them. And that's really where the tension lies, is in these relationships between typically close people. So in the psychological thrillers, there are things going on either in a marriage or between close friends or very close family members, where in the Jack Logan, Taylor Phillips books, that you have, as you said, a much wider stage. So you have people that they don't even know doing things that are affecting their lives completely, outside of their consciousness. But then, of course, at some point converges. So it's definitely more outside forces, I think, coming in, affecting their lives, where the psychological thrillers, I think it's more internal psychological issues or relationships that are driving the tension and the action.
So in The Silent Conspiracy, when the book opens in chapter 1, we meet a character, Maggie Russell, and I'm wondering where's the story going? Who is this character? And I start getting in, I start trying to kind of inhabit the space where Maggie is, and just immediately, like within 2.5 pages, you completely pull the rug out from under me, and I'm sitting there with my mouth open going, what in the world did I just read? And I loved it. I was like, oh my gosh, I have to know what's about to happen. How do you come up with a great way to open a book? Because that hook at the beginning makes us want to stay with you for 400 pages, give or take. Do you think of the beginning from the beginning, or is it part of the editorial process of going through it and saying, I need to go add a great hook at the beginning? Where does that come from in the creative process?
It's a little bit of both. I mean, so in this case, I was trying to figure out how to start, and to start with either, like, initially the thought would be to start with either Jack or Taylor because it's their story, but I wanted to start it with a bang, and there was really no way to do that unless it would be so passive, because it would have to be really one of them sort of watching what was going on, and so the reader would hear it secondhand. So that's when the idea came to me that I wanted to show, because the book talks about this series of strange murder-suicides that are going on, which is the story that Jack is working on. So I thought, rather than opening with him, which I think I probably did initially have him like watching something on TV, and then I thought, no, it would be much, much more visceral feeling to actually have the person see what it was like to be in the point of view of one of these people. And clearly, like, I couldn't have 20 different points of view in the book, so I couldn't continue that. but I thought I could at least show one of them, and that would kind of kick you into the story. So that's how I came up with that. And then in all of our books, even if the first chapter idea stays the same, invariably we do go back through the editorial process and revise that chapter a lot, because in this case I didn't have to as much because this wasn't a character that stuck around too much. But if it starts out in one of my main characters, then I don't know them as well, obviously, in the beginning of the book, and we kind of write our way into the story. So at that point, once I do know that character better, I will go back and flesh the character out. Although in this case, which is so different from the Live books, of course, is that I know my character, I know Jack and Taylor very well. So I think that's one of a little bit of the feedback that I've been getting so far is that people are enjoying the characters and feeling that they're well drawn. And I think that that's because it's a series now. And so in book 2, I know them even better than I knew them in book 1, which is a new experience for me, because typically, as you know, with Live, it's a complete new story and new characters every time.
Scribophile is a respectful online writing workshop and writers community. Writers of all skill levels join to improve each other's work with thoughtful critiques and by sharing their writing experiences. We're the writing group to join if you want to find beta readers, get the best feedback around, learn how to get published, and be a part of the friendliest and most successful writing workshop online. Improve your writing by receiving detailed critiques. Learn from a vast collection of free writing resources. Make lifelong friends in our busy community of writers. Writing is a solitary art, but that doesn't mean you have to be lonely. Lucky for you, there are thousands of writers on Scribophile every day, and we're a really friendly bunch. You've never seen a writing group like this one? Join Scribophile today at scribophile.community.
Well, in your previous book, The Network, there are some pretty heady topics that you're taking on in this book. And you deftly weave this great gripping story around something that a lot of us notice and talk about, and that's the way that the media and marketing and big companies are subtly and sometimes not so subtly manipulating us into buying their product, becoming endorse their brand and all of this stuff. And you show us in The Network the way that this can go awry. And it was a great story and a great kind of cautionary tale that was wrapped up in this great thriller. When you started thinking about the silent conspiracy, was there a kind of a grand overarching topic that you were thinking about that this story came out of, or do you even think about those kind of overarching topics at the beginning of a book?
I do. I think it's more so in under the Elsie Shaw. For The Network, there were so many that had been percolating in my mind for so many years, and there were so many themes and issues that I wanted to address that I almost had to cut some of them out. And so when it came time to write the follow-up, I struggled a little bit trying to figure out, well, what I want to say. I mean, I knew that the story with Damon and the religious aspect with like the ancient relics, I knew that was going to continue. And I kind of knew where I was going with that. But then in terms of what Jack and Taylor would get drawn into, I wasn't sure. And I think what drew me to choose healthcare, which really, if you think about it, kind of both of their stories, even though Jack's is on the surface doesn't really look like that because he's just kind of trying to figure out what's causing people to go insane. But then you've got Taylor's story working with all of these people who have been disenfranchised by their health insurance companies because they're either, they've bought into a cheaper product that now has excluded a lot of life-saving tests. And it's again that idea of what is the value of life and at what point is a life worth saving. So in this book, which concerns me that we're moving into that direction with a lot of which is the same themes in some degree in The Network of the bioethicists saying we have limited resources and how do we best use them? So can there be a time where a health insurance company says, well, you might need a heart transplant, but you're 80, or not a heart transplant, just heart surgery, but you're 80. So do we really want to spend the money on doing that? Well, you could still have 20 more years to live, but who gets to make these decisions? And I think we see it already in terms of diagnostic testing. You go to the doctor and they want to do an MRI, and you practically have to get Senate approval to get the insurance company to pay for it. And so I just kind of wanted to weave some of that into personal stories to show what the effect that has on people. That it's not just somebody sitting behind a desk crunching numbers and saying, well, how do we improve our bottom line? And too bad what it does to people.
Right. So you can have these ideas of, this is a topic that I'd really like to talk about, and these are things that we as a society should be exploring. It's a whole other thing to then find out, to come up with a great scenario that you could drop, Jack and Taylor in the middle of and spin a yarn about it. How do you go from, from Lynn thinking about these great topics that we should talk about to, L.C. Shaw, the writer, who then spins a yarn around this? How do you translate those?
I think, again, through character. So in The Silent Conspiracy, you have Leonard Reed, who is the health insurance company CEO, and he is just about as despicable a person as you can get. From the way he treats his wife, to the way he treats his employees, the way he thinks, to everything about him. But yet, in his own mind, he has a justification. He feels perfectly justified in behaving in the way that he is, and he's doing his duty to his shareholders and this and that. And so I think that for me he was an interesting character. I mean, a hateful character, but an interesting character to write, and kind of having that subplot of what's going on with him and his family and what he's trying to achieve and how that fits into the bigger thing. And again, bringing in greed, corporate greed, all of that, but putting a face on it, I think makes it interesting. And so that's essentially when I think about story and I think about themes and what's going on, I think about, well, who's doing it? Who are the people? What kind of a person would do this? And what makes a person be drawn to this kind of a career, or be able to go to sleep at night and completely be comfortable with the choices that he or she is making. So yeah, that's how I play it out.
Lynn, in talking with you in the past, and you and Valerie in the past, I know that you worked in the corporate world, and that you had always considered yourself a storyteller, and that you and Valerie had worked together in the past, and different projects. But there was something that happened a few years ago where there was a mental shift, if you will, where you decided that you were going to take your writing and publishing career to the next level, and that you were going to do this thing. What is it that, because there are a lot of people that consider themselves storytellers, and that they dream of being a writer and having something published. And then there's something about the people that take that desire and act on it, and actively pursue the thing. What is it that makes a writer a successful writer? Is there something? Is there a decision that's made in your mind one day? Is there, what is it that sets off the trigger?
Well, for me, it was, I as you said, I always did consider myself that, but I worked and I homeschooled my kids for a while. I allowed other things, or it was just a playtime in my life where other things were more important. And then I went to a Thriller Fest conference. I can't remember what year it was, but it was like 7 or 8 years ago. And that was sort of when the shift happened, because I had written one book with my sister, Circle Dance, years and years ago, and I had been working on what eventually became the network. It was called something else back then, and I had been working on that while I was working in the corporate world, and would change it, and it was just one of these like 10-year books. And I went and I was very inspired by the craft classes, by like the friendliness of so many of the authors that I met. And I think it was when I started to meet people who were younger than I was at the time, who had already written like 10 books, and I thought, what are you doing? Like, you either, if you're going to be a writer, then write, like get serious. And so that's when I came home and I finished the network, finished the first draft of that. I started I got onto social media. I started a website. I told my sister, you need to come with me next year. And we began going. And that's when I just decided, no matter what, I was going to continue to write. I took craft classes. I just really poured my heart and soul into it and decided, my mom used to say different things, like if, people wanted to say, go get a degree, and it was going to take 4 years, and they're thinking, oh, that's a long time. And she'd say, the 4 years are going to go by anyway, so you may as well do something with it. And that's kind of the attitude that I took, was it doesn't matter how long it takes. If I keep at this and I write, and I continue to write, and I write the next book and the next book, eventually one of the books is gonna get me that agent that's gonna then get me hopefully published and launch my career. And so it was a one foot in front of the other, but really the perseverance, I think, more than anything, that if I had to pick one adjective to describe what makes you a success, I would say it's perseverance. And I just wasn't going to give up, no matter how long it took.
Some of my favorite books in the world are thrillers, and I love the tension of really falling into a story and digging into it, getting to know the characters, and then seeing those characters in peril. And thriller writers are some of my favorite people in the whole world, because they're nothing like the books that they write, and it's kind of hilarious when you get to know them. What is it about thrillers that draws us in, and how come we find ourselves in these situations in a book that hopefully we would never find ourselves in real life in? But why are we drawn to these kinds of stories, Lynn?
I think we can relate because most of the time, with thrillers, these are ordinary, typical people. We were not talking about superheroes, although I know that's popular, as well today. But we're talking about people that are just like you and me, who find themselves in an extraordinary situation and then somehow figure out how to prevail over, evil. And I just think I think we're wired good versus evil. I think we all, hopefully all of us, or most of us, want to see good overcome. We want to see the right thing happen at the end, but it's thrilling to be a part of that whole journey and the fight, and it kind of makes life interesting, because we know that there's just forces in nature. There's just the positive and the negative, and the light versus the darkness. And for me, I don't know, I guess I just like to take that ride with people. I love to just be in the book, and or at least you hope that in the end everything is going to turn out okay. Although I also think that's changed a little bit in recent trending. So you're not always sure if the person that you love is going to make it, but you hope so. And it's kind of a way to get that excitement, but you don't have to actually put yourself, in danger on the line. You don't have to go out there and be actually fighting crime, but you can vicariously live through these people on the pages of the book.
So Lynn, I last talked with you and Valerie, I think it was May of this year. And it was before summer really kicked off and started. And we'd been dealing with COVID for, a month and a half, close to 2 months maybe. And we all had hopes and dreams that we were going to have a normal summer as, time went on. And now here we are in September, sitting on the other side of summer. And a whole lot of us really didn't get to have much of a summer. We didn't get to go anywhere. We sat home and we stared at one another like we had been doing for months. And
right,
and talking to writers just about every day on the show, A lot of us work from home. We have a home office where we write and we do things. And the majority of a writer's life is spent alone with this manuscript that they're working on. So you would think that that a pandemic wouldn't have a whole lot of effect on writers because we're home doing our thing anyway. Um, but what I've noticed is that there's some sort of a weird mental thing that's going on where it's sapping people of their creativity or their kind of these greater issues that are weighing down on them. How have you weathered this summer, and have you noticed that the dumpster fire that is 2020 has had an effect on your writing life?
Right. It's interesting. Initially it didn't, because I think only because circumstantially, fortunately, we were like in the middle of edits when everything started. So we didn't have to start from scratch at that point. We were, so we were able to kind of continue to push through. And then we had a couple other projects that we were just really, really busy. And it wasn't until we wrapped most things up, and now we're starting on our fifth book together, Live book. And about 2 weeks ago, I guess, I feel like I hit a little bit of a wall because we're not under strict deadline right now. It's really more self-imposed at this point. And I usually don't. I typically don't even take really a full weekend off, just because I don't know. I just find myself, I'm always either doing some marketing or I'm doing some writing. And my sister has finally, she was able to see some family, because of course we've all even been isolated from our extended family, but her son and daughter-in-law and granddaughter are visiting with her. So I knew that she was going to take a couple of weeks off, which for me to take a couple of weeks off at home is unheard of. And I was going to keep writing, working on this book that we're developing, and then I figured, she'd catch up. But I found myself just taking the time as well, and kind of like having to drag myself into my office. I haven't had the creative energy this past couple of weeks. And so I've given myself permission to just read a lot, watch television, and I'm hoping, like by next week, I shouldn't even say hoping, because I'm going to force myself. I will make myself sit down and get back into it, because I have to. But I mean, for the first time, I could kind of see it was a bit of a malaise kind of overtaking me, thinking, do I really want to, so then I would find some movie to watch or this or that. So I understand why people were like that. I think we were just lucky that we didn't have the choice. But I can see where if you don't have really something that's a strict deadline, where it would be, because it is. It's like, it's overwhelming. I don't know. I was watching my best friend's wedding yesterday. I hadn't seen that in a while. And Julia Roberts is at the airport, and no one has masks on, and everyone's running around. And I'm just watching it, and I'm thinking, gosh, are we ever going to be able to get back to that? It's just it's so sad. I hate it.
I'm really interested to see next year if there's going to be a glut of pandemic thrillers that come out, and things that go terribly wrong during quarantine and things like that.
That'll be
really interesting. I know you're we kind of laugh about it at first, and they were like, oh, I really hope that we don't relive that again in every novel that comes out for the next 5 years.
Yeah, I won't be reading those books. I can tell you that.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I've had all of it that I can stand. I don't want to relive it in my entertainment. Exactly. Right. So I know that you said that you and Valerie are working on the next Liv Constantine books. At the end of The Silent Conspiracy, I'm not going to give away the ending for folks, but will we see Jack and Taylor, or are they going to be starring in more thrillers coming up? And how do you feel about these characters going forward?
Yeah, I definitely feel I want at least one more. I always sort of envisioned it as a trilogy, even though, of course, they're standalones. Like, you can read The Silent Conspiracy without having read the network. And the plan would be for the same thing. But I don't think their story is finished yet. And I that's the other thing I've been kind of doing a lot of kayaking. And when I'm kayaking, I'm thinking, all right, what's going to happen in the next book? So I kind of know how I have a feeling of how it's going to open, but I'm just trying to figure out how it's going to resolve itself. So that is my hope to write at least one more, and then I'm not sure after that if that'll finish their story or whether it will continue. I'm up in the air about that.
I'm excited to see where it goes. Can you tell us anything about the upcoming book with you and Valerie?
Sure. So, we have our fourth book is coming out in July, and it's called The Stranger in the Mirror. And that one I can't say too much about it, but it's just about a woman with some identity issues. And what's interesting about this book, it's the first Live book where we actually have a male perspective as well, a male point of view. So that was a little bit different for us, and we had a lot of fun writing, and it's a very psychological thriller. And then now we're working on book, a totally new book that we're starting, that we're excited about, which I think is pretty sure we're gonna have this one take place in Greenwich, Connecticut, the fifth one. So that's the one sort of too early to say too much about that one. But the fourth one is already finished, and we don't have a cover or anything, but I mean, I think it's even up on online retailers and stuff right now. So.
Got it. Can't wait to see what comes from that. So television and movies have also kind of taken a hit this summer with, I know, production shut down on a lot of things. But is there any news on the TV or movie front? I know you guys had been in talks a while back about one of your novels being adapted. Any movement on that?
Yeah, slow movement, but yes, we still have an option for a feature on The Last Time I Saw You, and we're hoping to finalize contract on any day now on that. And the same producer that's doing that is interested in The Last Mrs. Parrish. So but maybe, I don't know whether that would also be feature or television. So we're hoping, that will happen. I think, and there has been a cost, but apparently what a lot of studios are doing, I think they're renting like a soundstage, and then they're putting the cast in a hotel next to that, and they're all quarantining together, right? So that they're able to, to do the movie. So as long as you don't have, from what I've been told, as long as you don't have huge scenes that require a lot of extras,
right?
I think they're going to be able to start rolling again. So I'm hoping within the next couple of weeks to have more news, and then once everything is signed, then I guess announcements will go out. But that's the plan. Yeah.
I would love to have a TV series with Jack Logan and Taylor Parks. Have you talked to anyone about taking these characters to the screen?
I mean, my agent is submitting and hoping. We haven't had any bites yet, but I would love to do that, because I could definitely see that as a television series. So I don't know, hoping and praying, but nothing yet.
Absolutely. Well, The Silent Conspiracy is out everywhere now when people are hearing this, in Kindle edition and paperback, and in my favorite format, which is audiobook. I love to listen to your audiobooks. We're going to put links to all of those ways that you can find it in the show notes. Lynn, tell people where they can find you online if they want to dig into all the great stuff that you do, and where they can find you.
Sure. So my website is lcshawauthor.com, and that has all my links to Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And again, that's my Twitter and Instagram handle, lcshawauthor, and also Facebook. And then for the Live books, it's liveconstantine.com, and both websites actually link to the other. So you can find pretty much everything on either website.
Awesome. We'll put links to that in the show notes to make it easy for people to find you. Lynn, this has been so much fun catching up. Thank you for all that you do. We're going to send everyone to get their copy of The Silent Conspiracy. And thank you so much for joining me again.
Oh, thank you, Hank. I always love talking to you.
World Anvil is a browser-based world-building platform designed for all world builders, writers and novelists, dungeon masters, game developers, and everyone else. World Anvil keeps your world setting safe and organized helps you find your characters, locations, plots, timelines, and maps quickly and easily as you write. Then, if you choose, you can showcase your amazing world building to the world, beautifully and interactively, to keep your readers engaged. You can even use our professional tier to build your career selling access to behind-the-scenes content your readers will love and growing your community. Build your world setting in any genre with over 25 custom-built world-building templates, complete with prompts to inspire your creativity. Allow your readers to explore the public parts of your world in an innovative new way with interactive maps, timelines, and wiki-style articles. Give special access to co-authors, beta readers, customers, or patrons to see exclusive behind-the-scenes content. There's a free version to get started with all of the major features. Guild membership offers you a host of extra options, including comprehensive privacy settings, co-authors, presentation options, and so much more. Join our community of over 800,000 world builders, including professional authors. Take part in competitions and learn more about world building at this fantastic online community. Use the coupon code HANK to get 20% off all 6 and 12-month subscriptions. WorldAnvil.com. I'm a recent convert and I know you will be too.